Hey gang, Derek here with another awesome windwirler video. We're doing another unboxing today. We're back at it with the Black Series from Star Wars, Star Wars Hasbro team. And we managed to snag ourselves one of these older releases here from the Force Awakens, I guess, wave of Star Wars figures. I mean, this box, it's got a little bit of wear and tear on it, so it must have been sitting on someone's shelf or some store somewhere for some time. I picked it up off of eBay for a pretty decent price. I think this thing set me back about $55 for, that's Canadian dollars as well. But you know what? Pretty sweet find. I took a look at the other Poe Damerons that they had put out. Obviously, there's that X-Wing one with the mush-looking face. It looks terrible, so I had to skip out on that, even though the X-Wing outfit would have been kind of cool. And then there's obviously the more newer one that they kind of put out for, I think that look he had was in The Last Jedi. But I found it was a little too close to Han Solo, which just the color palette wise, and this one to me just like really stood out. It had a solid head sculpt, and I also like the outfit and the paint detailing on it. So we're gonna get into this, and plus I did want to start, army building a couple of these First Order troopers, and so this is a great offering as well because you get a couple extra cool Riot gear accessories. So we're gonna just open this up, but let me just take a quick read here on the back of the box. Obviously, they always do a great job with these original boxings. Like, I think they hit the nail on the head with like this is a perfect kind of box, I feel like. But more than anything, like these little art pieces they always do on the back, and then a little quick read up has always been cool. So we'll start with Poe Dameron. So, an ace pilot, Poe Dameron is a leader in the Resistance fight against the evil First Order. He soars into battle behind the controls of a modern X-Wing fighter. Very cool, very cool. I mean, the thing is with Poe, he's definitely like was meant to be the Han Solo update, I guess, for this generation. We'll get more into that in a sec here. Obviously, if you guys watched my previous Star Wars unboxings, you know I'm hyped up on Prism's Star Wars right now. So if you haven't checked out Prism's rewrite of the sequel trilogies, it's a really cool video. He uses AI images to generate pictures, and he basically tells a story, sort of like an audiobook. It almost feels like it, but we'll get into that stuff a little bit later. But for now, take a look at what the First Order Riot Control Stormtrooper, armed with specialized weapons. This First Order Riot Control Stormtroopers, the First Order Riot Control Stormtroopers are trained to subdue crowds in the most ruthless, efficient manner possible. Cool. I guess not so cool if you're in the crowd. I got my old classic knife here that I used to use. My other one I can't find at the moment. But this one's actually a lot more slick, I feel. So we're going to cut the taping up here. We don't care about the box, especially this particular one, because this box is in pretty bad shape. But it's cool how they have the little window at the top too, hey? So you can kind of see all angles from them. They really kind of put these the newer boxes to shame, because they don't have as much displayability. If you're one of those mint in box collectors, then you're kind of shit out of luck with some of those new ones, especially Marvel Legends. We'll pop this guy out. Oh shit, there we go. Stick that over there. Okay, cool. So we got this plastic thing, the shell that they're in. One thing I like about the like Star Wars ones is they don't come with twist ties and shit, so you don't have to worry about cutting weird plastic things. Like, they're just stuck in there, and like this to me is probably the best way to go about it. Here we get a nice background. Unfortunately, it looks like there's a bit of damage here on the center one, but these are cool. I didn't actually comment on it in the last unboxing I did, but these are great for shelf display. You can put these in the back. It's nice, bright, vibrant, a little backdrop. Sometimes they actually do cool, images and stuff on the back, which I kind of wish they would do that, but it is all good. So first things first, I think we're gonna start out with Poe. We're gonna start with Poe, and we'll get to because he's got more accessories and such. Get through the painful part here. Get around to the Nice. Okay. Put that back there for now. and we shall get our first impressions of Poe Dameron. Okay, so decent leg movement from what I can tell here. Yeah, got the upper thigh cut, which is a must, an absolute must. DC figures never seem to get that. Here we got a little boot, short boot here, but we got the ankle pivot, which also absolute must. Double jointed knees. I like how they have this sort of worn, dirty kind of pattern on the knees here. And it definitely shows like these guys have been fighting the good fight, and he's not afraid to get messed up. It might be from Tatooine Sands too. I'm not really sure. Or no, actually I think I remember because he was like kneeling in that first scene, so it must have been because of that. And then he's got this weapon here, which his weapon actually has, like some, I guess that's some dirt or sand wear on it. But it's pretty cool. I haven't had a weapon like this before. This is a totally new gun for me, so that's neat. I'll toss that over there for now. And then Poe's arm. So we get back and forth articulation here, which once again, like I think for Star Wars Black Series, I prefer the up and down opposed to the back and forth movement, because it just, especially for guns and swords, like you get a lot better movement from it. But I'm just happy to have any articulation at all at the wrist. That's still good. As far as the elbow bend, we're actually barely getting, I think we're barely getting 90 degrees there. It's a little bit off. So that's a little bummer. I know there's some figures, like they tend to have the single jointed elbows, but there's some like the newer Kylo figure. He does have the single bend. Same with the Dark Ray, but they both can bend a lot further up. It almost looks like if you had some kind of tool that could shave down this here, you might be able to actually be able to get more of a bend of it. But I mean, that would be a risk of damaging the figure. But I mean, it is what it is. I don't find this that bad. I mean, there's definitely worse figures out there for articulation. You can still get a lot of good stuff out of this, but you're just not going to get, like, you can't even get him to put his hand on his head. Like that's kind of a bummer. But we're going to make do. I do like this. I mean, as far as the sculpt goes and detailing, I mean, the coat looks fantastic. This is a great design coat. It's got this little ribbing here and the back. And then over here, I mean, this looks like the kind of coat that you might wear while flying in X-Wing. It's kind of got the colors. If you did this up tight. I mean, this to me is more of a casual version of the X-Wing suit, which is just basically a flight suit. Looks like there's a bit of warping in this leg. I might need to do the hot water trick to kind of get that going straight. But it is a nice jacket. And I mean, they were a little bit weird about the jacket in the first Force Awakens. I mean, he like gives the jacket to, for some reason finds the jacket. I mean, that whole scene where they crash just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because they crash together. Poe disappears but leaves his jacket behind. He leaves Finn behind. I guess he just met this guy and maybe he was pretending to be his friend so that they could both escape. And so he's like, oh, well, he's probably dead. I'll just leave him for dead. But then they also make it seem like they're best buddies all of a sudden after knowing each other for a minute and escaping Star Killer Base or wherever the hell they were. It was just odd. The whole thing was odd.
Hey, editor Derek here, popping in from the future. I found out recently that JJ actually planned to have Poe killed off in that first scene when they crash. That's why he disappears. But uh, apparently, a conversation between him and Poe, or him and the actor that plays Poe, and I guess he liked him or something, and they decided to write him back into the rest of the film. So just another example of how this whole thing was never planned out, and they were just sort of flying by the seat of their pants or whatever. And it's just crazy. It's crazy because, like, I mean, it's hard to imagine the sequel trilogy without Poe, but they didn't have a plan for him at all. And then Finn gets sidelined in the last movie, and they have this whole bit with Poe and like his ex girlfriend or whatever, which they could have saved that all for like a mini series on Disney Plus, something like that. I know they didn't have Disney Plus back then, or even do their own movie. It's just so weird, like they really didn't know what they were doing, or what they had. They had something great, and they just basically let a lot of that slip away.
But in any case, look at some of these accessories and we'll get back to this. And this helmet's good. I thought it would be a little bit more rubbery, a little bit easier to, more pliable material, but it's actually quite stiff as well. So I worry about scratching his head when I stick it on there. But I mean, it's a perfect prop. I mean, this was another reason I wanted to get this figure, was to get this nice little, X-wing head helmet prop. So, and it looks cool on him. So I don't know, when I do stop motion with him, maybe I'll try and create a little cockpit for him to fly around in, and then I'll use like a smaller toy X-wing for on green screen background, something like that, sort of the old school. Those flight things, like the Millennium Falcon I know had a real model that they use, so it's kind of funny. The sculpt itself is good, but I would say that upon closer inspection, like, his 5 o'clock shadow is a little bit too weird. I know it looks better on this side, like it blends nicely into the sideburn, but this side it just kind of cuts off, which I don't know if I'm gonna have to fix that somehow. I don't even know how to go about fixing it, but I'm sure that the that newer that newer one that came out recently, the one that I was saying, it's got the same kind of colors as Han Solo. That's sort of why I wanted to pass up on it. I'm sure it has a little bit better paint apps. Like this, it's not super great, but I mean, it looks better on this side for sure. I don't know. I can live with that. From far away, it looks okay. It just doesn't blend as nicely on this side. I don't know what happened there. Okay, this looks actually pretty cool. I'll be honest, it is a struggle to get him to hold that gun. And I mean, the helmet looks cool once it's on as well. So, I mean, if you could find a way to, see, trying to put it up is a little bit tricky. Because another thing, too, is you can't quite get it to be tucked into where you would be holding a gun. So, to me, it makes me think that whoever designed the guns for this series might not have ever actually held a gun in their life or used a gun. And I think that might be one of the problems that we're getting with... Because this isn't just Poe Dameron's issue, like, this is many, many figures from Hasbro that just can't seem to fucking hold a gun properly. He actually does hold the gun fairly well. Now that I've been messing around with this figure, I was trying to have him hold it by this thing. I thought this might have been the grip, but apparently this here is the grip. So, forgive me, I don't really understand these futuristic guns and how they're supposed to operate. I'm sure they're based off of regular guns. But I originally was thinking, like, I don't think these people who design the guns even know how to hold it. But it turns out I'm the one who doesn't really understand it very well. So I guess I got to do a little bit of gun education on my own part here. But no, he actually does hold it fairly decently. You can get him pointing it and holding it well this way. Of course, you can't really get his eye up to the scope. That's still a gripe. But in any case, it still looks cool in his hand. I mean, you can just rest it like this, all that kind of thing. I mean, there's stuff you can do, and you got to focus on the positive stuff as best you can. I think, like, going back to what I was saying, like, I know that first video I made, I really did, I mean, I called those new sequel movies awful, and I said that I really dislike them, and that's the thing, is I don't love them the way I love the original trilogy or the prequels, but there's a lot of cool concepts in it, man. And like the costumes designs, the characters, I loved all the stuff that they did add to it. It wasn't like a proper story, because what you had was a bunch of different creatives who were butting heads instead of just one single mind developing an entire story. You had corporate Disney picking and prodding at these writers and directors, telling them we need to have this box checked off and this box checked off. And then you had, two different directors, like one who is a fucking maniac who wants half the people to hate his movie and half the people to like it, which is an insane thing to want from any creative endeavor. Like, I mean, I don't really know, like, if he's thinking of art, like a piece of art, like a painting, sure, why not? But I mean, a movie, like, typically you want the most people possible to like your movie, right? I mean, you have Lord of the Rings, which is like generally beloved by every single person that watches those movies, and it's incredibly successful, right? Same with the original Star Wars. Like these are the things. Like who goes like why would you want to go out and be like, I want half the people to dislike my film? Like he literally said that in an interview. Just insane. But I don't know, like the thing is like I like the characters of Rey, Poe, Finn, you know, Ben, Solo, Kylo Ren. Like I like those four editions. It's just the passing of the torch was fumbled. You know, they had to shove it too far into people's faces. People wanted to see if this is like the end of the Skywalker trilogy or the Skywalker or whatever arc. Like, why was it not really about Luke Skywalker? Or like it just felt odd, you know? It felt odd. And at the end of the day, like I'm gonna be critical of this stuff, but if you like those movies, if you're not as critical about it, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that I mean I still can find some enjoyment out of it. Obviously I'm buying the figures and I'm going to be doing my own little stories with them, but I think at the end of the day, like I watched this interview with it was Star Wars Theory and Sam Witwer, who does like the voices for a couple characters in some of the animations like Maul, and he does Star Killer in the Force Unleashed. And he had this great thing that he said about what makes like a really great director is to like when you're on set in the moment to make the right calls as you're going about creating these things. And it's easy to look at a finished product that is released and improve upon it afterwards and say, well, you could have done it this way, this way, this way. But when you're in the thick of it, when you haven't seen the full picture, like if you're not making those right decisions on the spot, or if you at least can make more right decisions than wrong while you're doing it, then you're a talented, you know, director in that sense. So I mean, it's debatable obviously how many right decisions and wrong decisions there were, but I think at the end of the day, like those movies still made quite a lot of money. And I mean, not that money is everything, but and it did continue the story. It's just in my head I'm trying to rationalize and convince myself that maybe one day I could watch those movies again with fresh eyes and maybe come out enjoying them a little bit more. But it's just hard to say, you know. It's just like it's like a bad ex, you know, a bad ex that just keeps telling you that they're going to be different, and then you go and watch them. You go and talk to them again, and they're just like still the same old, and it's just like, why did I even bother, you know? That's how I feel with Marvel and Star Wars right now from Disney. It's just anything they put out is like, please don't mess up my beloved franchise any more than you've already have. Like that's what I'm thinking. I'm not excited to be like, oh, what are they going to add this time? What's new exciting story are they going to tell? What cool character are they going to introduce? It's please don't fuck it up anymore. Like, why is it like this right now? Now, Poe's character in Prism Star Wars, so this is another spoiler section, so please, if you haven't checked out Prism's videos, you know, what if The Force Awakens was awesome? What if The Last Jedi was awesome? What if The Rise of Skywalker was awesome? Go check those out right now. But basically, one of the points here, and like I said, spoilers, one of the points that's really interesting is the dynamic between Poe, Han Solo, and Ben Solo. What you have is, you know, for one, Han Solo is like one of the main sort of people that helped develop this new flight academy for the New Republic's, I guess. Basically, most of the pilots that come out and join go to this academy, and Han Solo basically pioneered a lot of the maneuvers and stuff and basically used his talents to teach the next generation, and Poe is his protege. So there's a connection between Poe and Han that starts this off right away. And this is an amazing connection because it makes sense how Poe can actually, why he would be such a Han Solo archetype is because he's literally looked up to Han Solo as his mentor for most of his life and almost as a father figure in a way. And there's a cool dynamic that he has between Han, Poe, and Ben, where obviously Han and Ben, their relationship is a little bit more distant because he went and trained with Luke as a Jedi and spent a lot of his time more with Luke, and because of this, like he would, it sort of put a bit of a distance between them because Han doesn't really get this whole Jedi stuff, where Ben and Luke's relationship is a lot closer in that sense. And for Han, like Poe is more, that taking on the mantle of whatever Han Solo was, and so he looks at Poe as the son that he never had, even though he still has a deep love for his son Ben. But and then Ben obviously has a little bit of jealousy towards Poe and Han and this relationship that they have, and that he wishes he could be more closer with his father, but he knows he has this responsibility to the Jedi. So it's just such a complex dynamic between these three characters alone in this series.
Hey, editor Derek here, popping in again. Now, another thing to keep in mind, George Lucas originally said that Star Wars was a story about fathers and sons. And so this dynamic, of course, is really well highlighted in Prism's trilogy. And of course, in today's society, there's sort of a lack of reverence for the father figure now. And I mean, there's almost a distaste for it when you have this toxic masculinity campaign that's been going on for a couple of years now, when there's plenty of positive masculinity out there, of course. Like the father should be a protector, the provider, and then that is sort of sidestepped now and almost frowned upon. When you have so many young men and boys, they need to have that strong paternal influence to help show them that they can be a good man. But you know, there's so much fatherless people out there. Of course, we're missing that message nowadays in our culture and our television. And I mean, George doesn't have any hand in what's happening with Star Wars, so I see why that's kind of been put aside. I mean, Han Solo in the sequel trilogy is sort of like a deadbeat dad that kind of, you know, they shipped their kid off and then he just basically went back to being a smuggler and left his wife and everything. But I mean, I'll give them points in the fact that when he did finally confront his son, even though he killed him, he still put his hand to his face and showed him like, I still love you, and no matter what you do. And eventually, that does lead to Ben returning to the light side. And so, I mean, that is decent messaging, the unconditional love from him. But I still think that there is a lack of strong father figures in today's media.
To me, Disney Star Wars introduces these characters, and then Prism took these characters and just went way in depth in them, way in depth, and basically just dug deep into, well, why would Poe be an archetype of Han Solo? Oh, okay, well, they know each other. He looks up to him. And then you have this great dynamic between Ben, almost a rivalry between Ben and Poe. And like, there's even a line that he has in like one of the later videos where he's like, he looks as Ben as like a kid brother, and now he's lost his way, and he just feels guilt about letting this happen to him. And it's just, that's another awesome thing, is this brothership between the two of them that could have been even more interesting and developed. And it's just like, these are really, really cool story concepts that could, in an actual feature film, be so much more fleshed out. It makes you wonder why they left so many of these characters such surface level, and like, we know so little about Poe. And I feel like a big part of it is like, you have, like, what I think they really should have focused on was obviously Luke, Leia, Han. The big three needed to be up front, especially in that first movie. And then Ben, Poe, Finn, and Rey are the next generation that we could have gotten more focus into their histories, their stories, their relationships with each other. But I found what they did in a lot of these, all three movies, is they get these other side characters that get more screen time and pull away from our main ones, which, when you look at the original trilogy, you had such a high focus on Han, Luke, Leia, even Kenobi and Vader. And you have this hyper focus on them, and then they do introduce some characters, like Lando gets introduced, Boba Fett a little bit, but Boba Fett is still just a side character in those ones. But you get such a more history, more dynamic between these characters, and a relationship that's deepened by their history. And so I think a big problem with like what these movies were is you have things that happen off screen, like Ben joining the Knights of Ren, you know, turning to the dark side. All that stuff happens off screen, and then you have stuff they wanted to happen on screen, or that they did do on screen, that could have been already established off screen, like some of these relationships between these characters. These movies came out in a really speedy time. They had deadlines, all this stuff, and it wasn't like the originals that had 10 years at a time for each trilogy to work on it. So I get it. I get why they came out the way they are. And at the end of the day, maybe I wouldn't change what happened. Maybe I still would have it happen exactly the same way, because like I said in a previous video, like we wouldn't have Prism's version. We wouldn't have a lot of these fan-made fan fictions that have come out that are just improving upon the story and taking these characters into other crazy directions. You wouldn't have that. And I think maybe one day people might look back a little more fondly on these movies, just like they did with the prequels. Maybe not quite exactly the same. I mean, I think people are still going to be pretty like critical, but I think nostalgia is going to ease these growing pains.
Hey, that was one hell of a retirement speech, Mr. Solo.
Poe, please. I'm not your teacher anymore. You can call me Han.
Yes, sir. I mean, Han. We're gonna miss your lessons here at the Flight Academy. What are you planning on doing now?
Just take it day by day. I'm headed to Yavin 4. Happens to be my son's final Jedi exam today, too.
Ben's finally gonna be a Jedi Knight, eh? Good for him. I'm headed out past that system as well. Why don't I escort you and Falcon in my X-Wing?
Come on. Did they tell you to keep an eye on this old man?
No, well, they didn't. Just here to help a friend. You're gonna do great, kid. Thank you, sir.
Okay, gang, so now let's get on to opening the First Order Riot Control Stormtrooper. Right now it appears that all we have is a painful part to get through, so let's just go right into that. We don't have to unbox this one. And it comes out not too bad. Stick him back there. Looks like we dropped this baton. Put that over there for now. And we'll just get our first impressions here. So here is our First Order Stormtrooper. Now I've had some classic Stormtroopers in my collection already. So for me this is sort of me comparing this one to those old school ones that I've had for some time. Right off the bat, I mean, he's got great upper chest swivel here, or diaphragm joint, so that's pretty cool. Lots of movement out of that. Legs, you got double joint. Does not, it's not too bad actually. And I actually find that this armor plating here doesn't impede the movement of his leg that much either, so that's a good thing. These belt pieces look okay. I think this is all attached. The original Stormtroopers had this as like a clip-on belt, so they shifted that. I'm trying to see here if there's any more movement on this, but I don't think there is. Oh wait, maybe this is a clip-on belt. I just can't imagine where it would clip on though, is the only thing. Okay. Very smooth, shiny compared to the regular Stormtrooper. We'll get an actual comparison out here in a sec. Then we have the Riot Shield here, which my Riot Shield looks like it's got some weird scuff on it, which is unusual because, I mean, you kind of associate the First Order with like this absolute cleanliness. I don't know what that is. Is that supposed to be there? I don't know. I can't seem to scratch that off. I don't know if that's supposed to be like paint detailing or what, but it definitely doesn't look quite that good if that's what it's supposed to be. Now, here's where things are starting to get a little troubling. So, I mean, the head articulation seems to be pretty decent. It's, you know, nothing crazy. I mean, he's got these helmets on. I know these helmets are probably really difficult to see out of. Foot does pretty well. little bit of... Oh no, there's literally no hampering. I thought there would be with these little parts that stick out, but that doesn't affect it at all. That's good. Now, I think we're starting to get into the weeds here. So his shoulder does pretty good. It's just decent. Now, here is where we're starting to come into some issues. Look at that. That is just no good. That is no good, people. What are we doing here? So because of the way that they've developed this armor here, it even looks like there's an extra little bit of space that could actually happen there. Let me just adjust my light here. Yeah, it looks like there's even a little bit more articulation that can happen there, but it's being hindered by the armor. That is crazy. And they didn't put a swivel right there, or like a gauntlet swivel, so that's it, people. Oh my god, this sucks. Like, that is some of the worst elbow articulation I've seen in a long time in a figure. I wonder why they did that, because that's a huge disservice. Looking at the wrist here, it looks like it's an up and down, which also isn't super ideal, but it does rotate. Typically you want to have it this. I mean, I always say this is what we need for these figures. This is not so good. So I guess that's where these figures kind of fall short, is they're not gonna really ever be able to hold a gun properly. And then so we got this shield, this Riot shield on this hand, and I mean his hand came backwards out of the package too. So now I'm trying to figure out, does this even come off? Like, what am I looking at here? I think that's like on there, man. I don't know if that's coming off. Holy fuck, why would they do that? Maybe it comes off? Is this stretchy at all? This plastic material? Or does this pop off? How do you get this off? I don't think it comes off, gang. Well, we'll have to come back in a second here and figure that out. But this, I mean, it's cool that he comes with this accessory. I like the idea that they have like Riot gear and stuff, but that is a very odd thing. Alright, let's cut right back. Sweet. Okay, so I actually managed to get the shield off. The hot water trick did the trick. This, I guess these bands here when they get heated up with the water, become pretty soft and pliable, so you can slide this right off. And I think when I do put this back on, I'm not going to stick it right up to his elbow the way they had it. I'm just going to probably slide it through, so this will be on his forearm and this will just be on his hand. And I think that's probably how it was meant to be, but when they packaged this stuff, it got messed up. I also tried to scrape this bit of whatever this is off, but I think it's just manufacturer mess up or something. I don't know. It doesn't look to me like it's supposed to be wear and tear, because they don't have anything like this anywhere else on the figure, so I'm thinking it's just a defect. But I mean, that's this whole pack has a few of those. Like, obviously we already went over Poe's missing 5 o'clock shadow on one side of his face. I mean, these are great sculpts, great designs, but there's a few little, I almost want to say deal-breaking things with some of these. So this is as close as we can get to having him hold his gun with both hands, and obviously it looks like he's, it's like he's averse to holding it. Like, he's like, no, I don't want this in my hand. Like, maybe that makes sense if he's a conscript, but I mean, at the end of the day, this definitely looks a little silly. So you're supposed to hold, I guess, like this little rifle blaster. Maybe, I guess you're just supposed to hold it with one hand, but even then, like, the hand itself isn't really gripping very well. They didn't really make it into a gripping hand. And what's odd too about this is, I'm trying to figure out why, but like, it seems to be bending upwards, even though it's got this kind of bend to it. So I think maybe they might have put it on like a half angle, so it's sort of half bending forward, half bending up and down. It's really hard to just figure out what's going on there, but yeah, it definitely looks a little odd, and it's too bad that you can't really hold it like the original Stormtroopers did. I don't know why they, like, there must have been some mess up somewhere along the line. Another thing that's kind of a missed opportunity is here. Doesn't that look like a peg hole? Well, it's not. It's just a black hole, like a black spot on the back. And it looks like this is where his gun could have plugged into as a little weapon storage, but they just, for some reason, said, nah, he doesn't need that. I'll still praise, like, the sculpt looks cool, and I actually thought that the redesign for the Stormtrooper armor in general was cool and sleek and did seem like it was modernized, you know? But yeah, I just don't know where things went wrong there. So, but here, let's have him hold his little gun. Once again, the hand is just not gripped enough for him to actually hold on to it properly. Maybe the other one is. This guy's maybe a lefty. Yeah, it fits a little more snug into the left hand, but even so, I'm looking at these fingers here, and it looks like these are glued together. So this isn't even a separate finger, so you can't have his gun finger on there, so it's just sitting kind of weird. Because this finger looks like it's totally sticking out, right? So you can definitely put something there, but here, this is glued. So that's a no-go. Wonder what's up with that. What's up with that? Okay, so I'm actually kind of stoked about the Riot gear now. So I swapped it to this hand here, and so you can see how I have it positioned where his hand is just gripping this ring, and this only goes to his forearm, where when they had it in box, this went right up onto the bend, and like this was over the wrist. So it was just really too encumbersome. I tried to slip it on this same way on to this hand, but for some reason, just the way that the back square on his wrist was designed, like it just won't slip up past this ring here. But it seems to do it okay on this hand. I can get this finger just about gripped over there. So, but yeah, it works a lot better on this hand. So I'm stoked about that. And I actually think that I tried to have him grip the baton here in this hand too, and once again, like just like the guns, it just falls right out. So this hand's pretty much useless, but it actually grips onto this baton really well with this hand. So maybe this figure just wasn't in general meant to be holding the guns. It's not very good at it, but what it is good at is these Riot weapons. So I mean, I guess it makes sense for the Riot trooper to be more proficient with these two opposed to the actual guns that come with it. I haven't really talked that much, but more just critiquing the figure itself, but going into like Prism and his story and how he shows the stormtroopers in that, we definitely get a more interesting in-depth look into Finn's reality as a conscript. Like they're all conscripted, forced to be stormtroopers, forced into being trained as these killers for the First Order. You get a lot of people who are opportunistic in that position, who will gladly, follow the person in front of them to get ahead so that they aren't treated as horribly. But then you got people like Finn who are just like scared and trying to, just survive and do what you have to do, and eventually just say no to the bull crap, not be another guy just taking orders, There's a great line with Han Solo where he's like, I'm sick and tired of people who just take orders. And it's like, I think what really makes a good soldier is the fact that not just obedience, blind obedience, but also to be able to discern what's right and wrong, and to be able to call out the orders or superiors, Otherwise, you just end up with the Empire, right? And I feel like that's why you need to have good people in the military and good people in the police. Alrighty, so we got a little comparison here between the new and old stormtroopers. Obviously, I mentioned before, this new design is a lot more sleek, and then you have sort of more angled, like armor pieces here throughout the original design, which, I like that. I think it's really cool. And another kind of funny thing to note, so like here on this one, they actually have a little, I guess a plug-in for weapon storage and whatnot, and they didn't end up putting it. So that's just a little bit of to me, that's just weird. Another thing to note too, obviously the original Stormtrooper had this nice nice double jointed elbow. And you also had my favorite kind of rotation at the wrist as well, the up and down, which made it a lot easier for him to hold the gun, you know, in these kind of cool sort of poses and get it pointed straight forward like that, right? And so we're never going to get that here with the new order, or the first order trooper, because of the bend at the elbow. Just so odd to me when you already have it established here that you wouldn't just continue that for the next one. But these are still solid. But looking at both these together, it's kind of cool to see like the evolution of the design, you know, like even on the back you have these two little slits, which originally were these two things, whatever that was, and then you get a bigger battery pack or whatever this thing is on the back than what we have here. I mean, it's interesting to see the evolution of the design. The belt here is a lot thicker, clunkier. Here you have a thinner belt with more, you know, more little tools and stuff. So just very, very cool.
Try to sneak up on me? Chump.
Okay, so here's a little comparison to some other, or I guess to each other, and also to my Dark Ray figure here. I guess we could probably throw in someone else here. Why don't we toss in 3PO? There we go. Yeah, so, I mean, height-wise, I don't know. I'm wondering if, because he is kind of, I guess, a little shorter. I don't know if the actor himself is not super tall, or, I mean, compared to, like, you know, Adam Driver, I guess, like, Adam Driver is pretty much the tallest character. Like, he's kind of a giant amongst these. Let me just toss these out for a sec. He's very tall, so I mean, he must be very tall in real life. This is kind of cool. I mean, maybe I still kind of like the idea of, like, if Ben and Poe are kind of like sort of like brothers in a sense, and if Poe is supposed to be kind of the older brother, I like the idea of him having a bit of a chip on his shoulder too. If he's like kind of smaller, he doesn't have force powers, all that, and so in a way they sort of butt heads even more in that, and then maybe like Ben's a lot more cocky because of this, opposed to them, but they still have, like, they could have a really fun banter back and forth. And with Rey, like, so back to Prism's video, like, just more spoilers here. If you still haven't checked it out, you should have checked it out by this point if you're still watching my video, but I'm just going to get right into it. But for Rey, they actually develop a relationship, her and Poe, in his videos, which it seems to be pretty natural, but also sort of like kind of conflicted in a way too. And I liked how there's sort of this little bit of a love triangle in a way between Rey, Poe, and Finn. Like, Finn kind of has this crush on Rey, and they're kind of close, but I think she more sees him as like a brother, because they both kind of went through the Remnant or the First Order business, and so they kind of have a connection in that sense. And I liked that they had that built into their relationship, and it made more sense for the two of them to have a kind of a connection because of, like, both being part of that darker past. But then Poe, like, she just finds this, like, connection with him, but Poe's, like, kind of conflicted because, for one, she kills basically his mentor and friend, but she eventually, like, by doing good deeds and, like, kind of, like, she even goes as far as trying to apologize about it to him, and it's just, like, cool to see how not every character likes Rey to start out. Like, she has to earn her the trust of these other characters, and eventually, like, they fall for each other, and it's actually, I actually think the chemistry between them makes a lot of sense. And that's my dog out there just barking, keeping the bears away. Sorry about that. No, I'm really excited. I'm really stoked on what they did with that, and it felt like the relationship between Rey and Kylo was pretty forced in that last episode. I remember, like, audibly, like, gasping when they, like, actually kissed. It felt like Palpatine was, like, trying to orchestrate this romance, which made it even creepier. Like, it's his little fan fiction, and then it was people, like, were hoping that they would get together and shipping them, whatnot, and it was just, like, out of all the things they could have done to like appease the fans, like that was probably at the very bottom of the list of things that like would have made people happy, you know, which is so weird that that's where they went with that. Really weird. But I'm sure there's a lot of people that love it and they loved how that turned out and they're happy that their little ship fantasy came true. But I don't know. I really think I'm gonna just stick with Team Poe and Ray. I think that was a great choice on Prism's part. And that's what I probably would have done myself. They would have been a pretty cool relationship, and then you could have explored like in Prisms when Finn like he kind of sees them making out and stuff. He like kind of unintentionally walks in on that, but without them knowing, he like turns away, kind of defeated. Like Finn in that, which we're gonna get more into that once I get him in the mail and we do an unboxing of him. But he's probably one of my favorite characters in Prism's Star Wars, where he was probably the most one of the most disserviced characters next to probably Luke Skywalker in the sequel movies. At the end of the day, I'm still happy that we got what we got with these characters, and I'll always rely on the fan-made community and what they put out as supplementary to the what we got. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked the video. Comment, let me know what you guys think of my opinions. If you're totally against what I'm saying right now, please give me your side of the story here. I've already tried to walk back some of my sequel hate, because I just feel that a lot of it is probably unwarranted, but I know there are some points specifically to do with Luke's character, at least, that can be very, very, I think a lot of people can agree on. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and subscribe if you love this.